like hybrid analysis we are doing. So it is showing like it is like malicious, and there are so many vendors that have flagged it as malicious. So in
Yes.
that case, do we again need to confirm with the services team whether you are having some activity going on, or we can just flag it as like true positive in that case?
Yes. So thing is that in almost all scenarios, always try to avoid doing the forensics part. Okay, always try to avoid kind of reaching out to the host and doing the analysis, like let's say what's the port number and other details. If you can get all those details, let's say from a log perspective, let's say from the EDR log itself, you can kind of quickly, let's say you got an alert and that system has an EDR log. Okay, let's say from the CrowdStrike or Carbon Black log, you can quickly figure out, okay, what's the process name and all. You can get it from the EDR rather than kind of jumping on that host. Always avoid that, doing that, because those things takes time. Okay, so even though like let's say c2.evil.com is like highly malicious in nature, obviously like as per Aristotle, but before kind of doing the forensic analysis on the host, depend on other logs that is already in your kit. So rather than logging into the investing time and kind of logging into the host and doing some analysis, you just see like, okay, let's do one thing just with the alert. So once we got an alert, the first thing you did was like you did a baseline of the traffic. You understand, okay, that it may be web-based traffic. And before reaching out to directly the team, what you do is that you also check the EDR log. Okay, EDR log, where you collect the details. Okay, that okay, if there's EDR log, you see that there's a process that is reaching out to that website, and you just see the EDR log, and you see that okay, that process is like EDR will actually flag that, telling that it is malicious or not, based on the alert, based on the analysis, and you see that okay, from the EDR you see that okay, this is the process. This is the parent and child relationship. Let's say what is the parent and child relationship of that process, and from there you see that okay, there is nothing suspicious in the parent-child relationship, and you also see that EDR says that okay, the process, the suspicious process is something which is like which is no, you have a hash of that. You check that okay, the hash is something like let's say not something malicious in nature in Aristotle, and also you see that okay, this process, the EDR actually does a lot of other analysis, like if there any kind of code injection in memory and all, it will highlight that automatically. Okay, for you, you don't have to do memory forensic analysis for that. So from there you figure out okay, everything is clean. You know that okay, this software that is making this query is totally clean, and you, based on the traffic analysis, you saw that it's a web traffic. Then just for a safe side, what you do is you collect all this info. Okay, you collect all this info, and then you drop an email, and then you engage the team, telling that okay guys, we got an alert. We are seeing that okay, it might be benign positive because of this reason. We see that okay, the web traffic is all good, the process details are also all good, but we want to have a cross check with you, telling that is it expected, and is the process doing that query is expected in your environment. So in most of the cases, what will happen, they will say okay, yeah, it's a expected one, and then you kind of close a case. So what you do is like you do a trials, you do certain assessment of the alert, and then so always be on a safe side. Okay, so in most of the cases, what will happen is that let's say this is the first time you got an alert for this c2.evil.com, and you figure out okay, why not, like let's for the first time let's connect to the service team or a team, and kind of just have it on a safe side. Let's ask them to have a cross check with them too, and they say yes, it's all good. You close out the case, and then later, like if an IDS is again kind of sending you the similar alert, and you see that okay, the alert pattern is similar, like okay, the traffic is similar, the process is also similar, then at that moment of time you take a slight risk. You don't reach out to the team, but you close out the case at that moment of time, telling that it's a benign positive. But it's always good to avoid reaching out. So you depend on the logs that is available over to you, like the network traffic log or the area log, but always avoid first jumping to the process system and doing the forensic analysis, because on a day you might get hundreds of alerts, and you can't just kind of invest time in kind of logging in and doing the analysis manually. You first all try to do, like, if there are logs that can support analysis, that's all good. So thing is that, as I told previously, you need to answer 3 questions. Okay. So questions were like, what kind of, you have the objective. So objective you have is to figure out, like, if this alert is true positive or false positive or benign positive. Now you answer the other questions. What kind of logs will help you answer that question? So the answer will come as the network traffic log, the EDR log, from where you can kind of figure out, okay, if it is true positive or false positive. And then once you get those logs, you try to infer from that meaning. Like, okay, what meaning you are getting from that log? Is it like benign positive or true positive? And if it is a first time alert, let's not take the risk. You kind of reach out to a team and kind of figure out, let's have a cross check with them. And once that's done, what you can do is, like, if the NIDS is kind of sending you a similar alert, you work with the tuning team and tell them, guys, rather than kind of pinging us with all the alerts that is coming from the NIDS for this domain, c2reveal.com, tune it, check it, like, okay, if the traffic is kind of a normal one, and if it is coming from this process, which is kind of a valid one, then don't send us an alert. Suppress an alert at the beginning itself. So rather than kind of this is something you can kind of avoid, you can do to kind of avoid getting multiple alerts for the same domain going forward. But it will depend on certain criteria that, okay, c2reveal.com, yes. If it is same process, yes. If it's same kind of traffic, like web crawling activity, yes. Then only you make those kind of statement, and then you suppress that alert. So on a normal scenario, just to summarize, always avoid reaching out to the forensic analysis at every moment of time. Try to kind of close the case at this part itself. Reaching out to service team is doing the network analysis or whatever logs are available online that you can analyze for that process. And then only once, like, if those things are something pointing out to something really big, then only kind of jump to the forensic analysis and do some analysis or do some root cause analysis, how that malware came into that system. Okay. So I hope this answered your question. Any other question on this, any other question on this, guys? So I think we're sort of time today. So guys, what all things we covered, let me just quickly see for today. So we covered, like, what's LAN, MAN, and WAN, how the network look like, and then we understood all the layers today in a much more depth. Like, we'll look at it in much more depth, but we looked at all the basic layers, like all the layer 7s. And then we also looked at, after understanding that, we looked at, like, how we can tap information from all this layer, because it is very much needed for security, guys. We need to know the ways how we can see the data from all these layers going forward. So today we looked at the 4 layers, how we can kind of understand the data and kind of take certain decision how NIDS or firewall actually works. It actually taps on the data which is in the transport layer rather than kind of taking the application layer. We actually look at how we can tap on using Wireshark and see the actual packets. And that's where the other thing what we looked at, and thanks for kind of raising this question to you, where we kind of also looked at how the normal forensic investigation would look like, how we can kind of, let's say a system is reaching out to evil.com, how will we kind of conducting the forensic analysis and kind of figuring out if that system, the malware or the suspicious process that is running on that system is true positive, false positive, or kind of benign positive. So that's how the normal scenario would kind of look like, where you kind of avoid doing the forensic for every cases as much as possible. You don't engage on forensic analysis as soon as you get an alert. You first try to avoid that. Okay. So guys, that's all for today. And what we will do is that we will kind of continue our discussion on, like, other protocols, how we can tap on that. And then we'll kind of look at the devices in much more detail, like router switches, what's the difference between router and switches, what the difference between layer 2 and layer 3 switches, what is like MAC address and IP address, what are different kind of classes of IP addresses, like class A, class B, or class D and E. So we'll look at all those things in much more detail. So thank you for today. Any questions, guys, before we wind up? I hope this session was interesting, and thank you again. Thanks a lot for kind of asking the question. This actually helps me in kind of making this session interactive and understanding more about you guys, like what are the things that you like to kind of discuss about. So thank you for that. And we will now wind up the call. And as I said previously, I need to kind of travel to a different country for attending a conference. So we will meet now